At time with Jordan. Is this mic on? The mic is live. Alright, we are ready to go. Foodie talk. Alright. On the radio, let's stop footing. Yes, this is AI. Keen to get started. Pump those ratings up high. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Alrighty guys, welcome back to another episode of Airtime with Jordan. I'm your host Jordan Faso, and how good. More footy for us to talk about on the weekend. Another early bye round, which is kind of annoying, but anyway, I digress. Hopefully, there's not too many of them left. I think Hawthorn and GWS have a break this week, so we'll keep an eye out for those to end and we get full 9-game slates again. And still the whole ladder thing is a bit of a mess still, isn't it? Just hard. You got Gold Coast playing 2 games, Hawthorn on 4, but after this weekend at least, hopefully that gap closes anyway. So, anyway, on to today's episode and the agenda for it. We're going to do a bit of a little stock take on each team as I go through the power rankings. So just my general thoughts. Just some quick little hitters on each team as I go through the rankings. Some of them probably not as much given they had the bye last week in Gold Coast, Collingwood and the Sydney Swans. But regardless, we'll go through each of them. A little bit of a stock take with where teams are at this point in the season. Have a little bit of a special rant time with Jordan this week. And then we're going to do a focus on, do a segment called Who You Got, famous NBA segment as well for some podcast fans of No Dunks out there. But who you got between Melbourne and Carlton and who is in the bigger hole in terms of their start to the season. So I'll talk through that, and then to finish off with, we're going to go with this week's Secret Star Society inductee. So anyone who hasn't listened to those before, it's just, a player, I'll do this weekly, a player who's caught my eye across the start of the season or in that round and maybe a little bit under-discussed or lesser known, and I think is deserving of some praise and potentially on the track to stardom. So, anyway, with that all said, let's get into our power rankings, and we've got a bit of shifting around this week, and I'll go through, as I said, I'll go through each team and do a little bit of a spiel on where I think they're at the moment, but 3 rounds or 4 rounds in some cases, and we've got a bit of movement in the board this week, I think, after some of the performances on the weekend. So, no change to my number 1 slot. The Brizzy Lions, the reigning premiers, still up there, still haven't moved for me. Haven't done enough to come down off that podium at this point. So, they've overcome everyone so far. They've had a tough start to the year on paper. Well, at least in two of the weeks that they've played. Sydney and Geelong, and then obviously the West Coast game as well. So who did challenge them as well, the Eagles in that game. So they've had a tough start to the year. And I think the fact that they haven't played a great game siren to siren, or from start to end, is probably a good thing for them. I know that maybe you can say, oh, maybe they're a bit, haven't quite hit their stride yet, but that's probably a good thing after round 4 or whatever it is. So, I'm still a little bit worried about their key forwards in that regard. I don't think that there's going to be much of a chance of them getting production out of Joe Danaher. The production they got from Joe Danaher last year out of the forwards they've got. Eric Hipwood had a very bad first half against Geelong. Played a lot better in the second half, I thought. But they've still got an absolute void there. I think Logan Morris is coming along nicely, but we'll see where he gets to in the mid part of the year, and hopefully he comes into really strong form at the end of the year and help him out down forward. Zach Bailey, though, unreal start to the year for me. Probably not so much in terms of his statistics and stuff, but watching the games, his influence has been unreal. Some of the moments he's had for the Lions to get them going has been quite. I don't know if it's underrated. I think everyone who's watching the Lions is understanding how good his start to the year has been. So, just wanted to shout him out on his strong form, and had quite a bit of a down last year. As for his expectations anyway, I think it was a relatively down year for him. So, good to see Zach Bailey up and about again, and one of my favourites to watch in the competition. And then second, we have movement, and we have the Hawthorn Hawks coming into second. They've gone up 1 spot from third on the on my power rankings, and I was hesitant to do it. Didn't want to come across as too much of a homer, but I think there's no way you can go past them, at least given the fact they had GWS above them, and they just beat them down in Tassie. I think you have to bump them up a spot there. They had a big win against the Giants down in Launceston. If anyone not watching that game, the wind in that game was pretty crazy. I got home sort of late on Saturday and went think I skipped the first quarter, not skipped the first quarter, but was on delay for the first quarter. Saw the score, saw Hawthorn were down like 35-4 or whatever it was, and was like, oh God, what's happened? And then, yeah, I'm assuming a lot of people probably thought the same thing. It was the wind. The wind was like that bad that, you're kicking into the wind and there's no arc on it. There's just like, it's going up in like a quarter of a circle and then dropping straight back down to earth. So, yeah, that was one of the crazier games weather-wise I've seen, and the Hawks and Giants have just played in some ridiculous weather games. I know they played in the snow a few years ago in Canberra, and then to follow it up with this wind game where I probably haven't seen the wind that bad at an AFL level in quite some time, and that's probably a bit of a tangent, but I think that's definitely a point or a data point for the AFL to be definitely getting that Tassie Stadium undercover. And yeah, just a bit more on the Hawks. Look, Nick Watson, unbelievable game. Was the top-rated player on the ground. Really, I think he definitely broke out in the finals last year. But as far as his regular season games go, I think that this was probably his best home and away game that he's played in his short career. And I promise you, he's going to make the All-Australian team as soon as this year and as late as next year. I don't think there's many better small forwards in the game right now than him. And yeah, I think that the impact that he's had within 2 years as a small forward, has to be acknowledged. And you may think I'm a bit of a homer in this regard, but hey, get on board, get on the Wiz train, and don't say I didn't warn you, because he is that good. I think I don't think that there's been a small forward as good as him in his first 2 years for quite some time. So. Yeah, and then my whole point of him making the All-Australian team was that he'd be Hawthorn's leading goal kicker and best small forward and in their best team, and that team includes Dylan Moore, and I think that Nick Watson has a chance to be better than him as soon as the end of this year. So yeah, get on the Wiz train, I think. GWS, I have third in my power rankings now. They dropped a spot obviously after the performance against Hawks on the weekend. It wasn't necessarily a bad performance. I think they got off to that hot start, but then just weren't able to capitalise in that third quarter when they had the wind again, and they actually lost the third quarter in that game against the Hawks. So yeah, I think that the midfield didn't look as good as I'd hoped, at least not that last weekend against the Hawks. Josh Kelly and Stephen Caniello, I think, really need a lift a bit. Jake Stringer's first game for the Giants was largely a non-factor. That's sort of the Jake Stringer experience, and as I said at the start of the year, if this is going to be the Stringer that you're going to get, I wouldn't have any hesitation dropping him. He had Krzyzewski, I think his name is, kick 4 in the VFL on the weekend, so I think that if he's knocking on the door and Stringer's giving you nothing for a few weeks on end, then that's a pretty easy decision for mine, especially now that Hogan is back, and he looks like he hasn't missed a beat. So, for them to get Jesse Hogan back and be 2-1, no, what are they, 3-1? Sorry, at this point in the season is really good. So. Yeah, I think that they're still going to be up thereabouts and definitely a top 4 contender for me. And there was 2 good teams playing on the weekend, so I'm not going to discredit them too much. But yeah, Finn Callahan had his worst game for the year so far. I think maybe that was the tough conditions, and I don't know how much to read into that from him. I hope he can be as consistent as he was across the first 3 weeks and continue that form, and hopefully this is one of the few games where he drops off, because I'm very high on Finn Callahan, as listeners of the pod would know, and I'm just hoping that isn't is not a trend that he has these games, one every 2 or one every 3. So hopefully he becomes that consistent midfielder for them. Sydney, I've got them 4th. They haven't moved anywhere. They had the week off. I'm not gonna let someone surpass them or whatever based on that, unless someone really jumped off the board for me. But I think I'm happy with where Sydney are at. Spoke about them a bit last week, but I think to be where they are, given the start and the degree of difficulty they've had to start the season, in terms of playing the opponents and travelling to Perth, is pretty well deserved that they're still there. Adelaide, they're coming in at 5th. I've made the move. I'll put them up too. So they're one of the big movers for me this week in the power rankings. It is a little hard to tell based off the sort of perceived level of competition so far. They've played St Kilda, Essendon and North Melbourne. They can't help who they've played, I guess. So you could argue that they've been better than GWS across the first 3 games, but I just don't think that I'm really willing to do that yet based on that competition. The mids, I had a little bit of, not hesitation about, but they were getting great service from Riley O'Brien across the first couple of weeks, and I was like, oh, maybe that's why their mids are playing so well, but they went up against one of the absolute premier ruckmen in the competition in Tristan Jerry, and he definitely beat Riley O'Brien on the day, especially in the ruck. James Peatling and Jake Saligo both got busy around the ball despite Jerry's dominance in the ruck, and they had a number of clearances. They had 9 and 8 score involvements each respectively, and I think that if those guys are just going to be contributors like at that level behind Jordan Dawson, who's probably their best player, they're going to be a very good midfield. They've got Matty Crouch, who's just a bull inside still, getting all the ground balls and contested possessions, giving it out to these sort of guys, and they've got a really good blend in the midfield. And I'm buying what Adelaide have in the guts at the moment. It's a bit of a bummer about Josh Rochelle, but they have the talent up forward to cover him. I think they've had multiple goal kickers in every game. They've scored quite heavily, so he's going to be missed. There's no replacing the way that he's, replacing him given how good he's been to start the year, and really disappointing for him because, as I said, he has had a very good start to the season. But regardless, very exciting start for the Crows, and could shoot even further up this board in the coming weeks as, they have Geelong and GWS within the next 3 weeks. So some really good competition coming up that'll test them, and pretty excited to see how they go against those two teams in particular. And as I said, if they're going to beat those two teams, then they are going to be firmly moving up my board even further than they have to start the season. So that's it on Adelaide. And number 6 we have Geelong. So they've dropped a spot from last week. I'm not worried yet about Geelong. They've obviously had back-to-back losses against the Saints, which was relatively unexpected, and then the loss against the Lions on the weekend as well. But I'm not worried just yet, but will I be worried if they lose to Melbourne in Geelong on the weekend? I definitely will be worried if that happens. I'm not, as I said, I'm not worried yet, but they're definitely on watch for me at the moment. The Cats, I think that they have too much talent to not be good. They should have beaten the Saints. If there was another 5 minutes in that game, they probably would have. Was there another 5 minutes? No. And again, they were on top for most of the game against the reigning premiers as well. So, they haven't had a bad start to the year. They had the big win against the Dockers round 1. But, I think that let's just keep an eye on them. Let's see how they go against Melbourne down in Geelong on the weekend and make another call after that game. I think that we need a bit more of a sample, and they've been quite competitive in every game. So I'm not super worried right now. The one thing is that the dart, Jeremy Cameron, has been very quiet the last couple of weeks. He kicked 4 in the first round, but then only managed 2 goals across the next 2 games that they played, and I think that I tend to think that he's going to bounce back. Like, he's too good not to, right? But maybe he just has one of these years where it's not his absolute best. So that definitely would lower the ceiling for Geelong if that's the case. But nothing to overreact to at the moment. And I think overall, like, all their vitals as a team look pretty good. They're up the top in most important differential stats, but just haven't been quite good enough for long enough in the last 2 weeks. So that's sort of what I'm putting it down to at this point. I've got the Pies 7th, so they haven't moved up or down for me, but I can't really knock them after a week off. So surely they won't be the first to lose to Carlton either, though. So hopefully not. But we'll keep an eye on that one as the Pies play them on Thursday night. Freo, I have 8th. And they haven't moved either for me. They sort of did what they needed to, but it still hasn't felt like what I thought they would be coming into the year. I'm sort of, I don't know. I haven't dropped them just yet, but I think that eventually, I don't know. All their guns have sort of been as advertised, but it's just not as strong as I sort of expected. And I'm holding on to them in their position for now in my power rankings, but they're another underwhelming performance away from a steep drop off here for me. And I know that it was a derby and it's competitive at the start, but I just don't think that they looked amazing against West Coast on the weekend. So, and West Coast have been quite pretty hit and miss to start the year. Obviously, a few 3 good quarters against Brisbane, but horrible against the Gold Coast in the week before that. So don't know what to think about Freo just yet. Hopefully Hayden Young comes back this week and helps bolster them a little bit more and gives them a bit more class around the ball and toughness as well. So that's one to watch out for. The Gold Coast Suns, I've got 9th. they've gone up 2 in my rankings. I've got to put them up. It's good stuff from them. Obviously, much talked about their wins away from home last year, and they've started the season with 2 wins away from home, and they've smashed both teams. But yeah, the teams that they have played probably aren't going to be featuring at the pointy end of the year. So, they've played West Coast and Melbourne, and I think let's just wait and see on the competition before we start getting too overconfident on the Suns at least. I think, as I said, Melbourne and West Coast are probably expected to be amongst the worst teams. But yeah, despite that, they definitely look stronger, the Suns, than last year, and they absolutely have the upside to climb even higher up my board as the season goes on. I think I spoke in the preseason about Rowell and Anderson. Those two, obviously individually, have had really good, strong starts to their career, pretty promising players, but it just hadn't really culminated in them performing as a midfield group. I went into detail with that in the Gold Coast Suns season preview, but looking at how they went on the weekend against a midfield that included Petrarca, Oliver, Viney, and Gawn, of course. They just had their way with them really, and I had, as I said, I had questions about how good they were as a group, but this is the start that I was sort of looking for, and they've been very dominant to start the year. So hopefully they can continue that this week. I think they play Adelaide, so that'll be interesting to see those two midfielders and see which one comes out on top. 10th, I have the Doggies. They've moved up 2 spots for me as well. They're just sort of getting it done without their key guys, and that's sort of the impressive part to me. It's been a really good start to the year for them, and they could be undefeated if a few calls went their way against the Pies. And that's despite having a ridiculous injury toll at the moment. Obviously, Bont being out, but yeah, I'm not they've absolutely performed above expectations for me, and they've found a few nice pieces throughout the start of the season as well, and I could have put them higher, but if there's one thing that the Dogs have proven to me over the last few years is that they are just so unpredictable. So knowing them, that once they get Bont and Treloar back, they'll just end up shitting the bed again, and me ranking them highly is going to just fall out the window, and it was all for nothing. But yeah, I think for the moment, I'm pretty comfortable with how they've started the season. I can't deny that they've been definitely better than I expected, and that's why they've gone up 2 spots on the power rankings. Coming in at position 11 on the power rankings, I have the Saints. So they've gone up 2 spots for me here as well. So as I said, a lot of movement on the board this week, but I'm going to bump them up a bit here because, while still tempering expectations for them, but they had a good win against the Cats, and the Tigers one was sort of as expected, but business as usual. But yeah, I think there's a lot to like from the Saints to start the season. Obviously, their top end guys are performing really, really well, and again, please watch Nazai Wangan-Malira if you haven't already. He's just a flat-out gun. Him and Jack Sinclair off the back line are just awesome to watch. Toby Trevelya had a really good debut. I thought they found another one in him. It's going to be interesting to see when Alex Taru comes back in, when Philippou comes back in as well. So they've got a lot of guys with upside in this team, and that I maybe wouldn't have thought they had that much at the start of the season, but they're finding pieces, and that they won on the weekend with laid out in Jack Steele as well. So Richmond's midfield was definitely more experienced than theirs, and the Saints were on top for most of the game there. So yeah, I think that it's good signs from them. Toby Trevelya, really good debut, I thought. Max Hall as well, another underrated guy playing that high half forward role. Made some really good decisions, pretty tough from what I saw. Lance Collard as well, kicked his first goal finally, and yeah, he showed a bit to me over the journey. I think that he's like a small forward for anyone who's not familiar with the Saints that much, but yeah, I think he had a really good game against the Tigers on the weekend, and has a little bit of zip, and keen to see how he can continue to develop down there. And then the other one is Liam O'Connell. This guy is just, I spoke about him as a player to watch in the preseason for the Saints, and he's an Irishman who was just I didn't realise how tough this kid would be, and he obviously he got concussed in the end, but in that push, the controversial push by Ryan Mansell. But yeah, this kid they've really found something in there. I hope that he might be his own worst enemy in terms of getting injured, because he had that game-saving mark against the Cats 2 weeks ago and went back with absolutely no regard for his own safety and took that grab. But yeah, I think that he's a pretty exciting player, and I've loved what I've seen from him to start his season, to start his career. And I think for the Saints, they are just in desperate need of a good key forward. I'm not sure if that's Max King anymore. Let's hopefully I know the injuries have caught up to him and everything else that surrounds him. But if he's able to come back and provide a real focal point for them up on the wing, give them someone to target other than Rowan Marshall, then it's going to be exciting. I think Mitch Owens has had a good start to the year too for the Saints, and I'm pretty excited to see how Max King fits back into that forward line and see him, Sharman, and Mitch Owens all work together, and then that allows Jack Higgins has been strong to start the year too, and allows their small forwards to really, really come into their own. And they've been really, really excited to watch the Saints to start the year. So hopefully they can continue that after their very poor performance against Adelaide, of course. So that's why I've got them ranked 11th. They've gone up 2 spots in the power rankings. So good watch for the Saints. They might become a KO pass team for me. 12th on the power rankings, I have Port. They've gone down 3 spots because I think that when your only win is against Richmond at home by as much as they did win, and you've gotten smashed by Collingwood, and then you lost to one that you probably should have won against the Bombers, then that things are just not looking great for them at the moment. Zach Butter's obviously out, probably their best player, but I don't think he fixes things to the degree that Port fans may want. Interestingly, I thought that they struggle to transition the ball without Dan Houston, and that seems to be the case. They just can't move the ball effectively at all. They're first in disposals per turnover, but are dead last in metres per disposal. So, they're getting a heap of the ball, but doing not much at all with it. They're not taking territory. They're not doing anything in terms of ball movement up the ground. So, I think that Butter's obviously one of their more dynamic players, but without him in there and without Dan Houston, it's looking very dry out there for the power at the moment. And without a real target up forward, as good as Mitch Georgiades has been to start the year, without a real target up forward to sort of break even, and with like some of their ball movement issues, then they're going to struggle. And the only really good user in the back half is Kane Farrell, and as I said, like he's awesome and he's a great kick and everything, but that's just one guy, and if you can't really funnel everything through him. So they're struggling pretty badly at the moment. I think Port, and pretty low on them at the moment, unfortunately. Obviously they're 12th on my power rankings. It's not dire, but I just have not liked what I've seen from them to start the year in terms of their ball movement. So that's why they're 12th. Carlton, I've dropped 3 places as well. It's happened. We'll dive into that a bit more, obviously, in the next segment where I talk about the who's in a bigger hole between them and the D's. So, I've got Carlton at 13th at the moment, and we'll go into that in a little bit. But I didn't think they'd be amazing by any means to start the year, but they are wasting some amazing Tom DeConing performances as well. So we'll get stuck into them in a minute. Essendon, 14th. I haven't moved them, but this last week was a much better result for them, obviously beating Port Adelaide. But that was the competitive Essendon we saw in week 1. Much better from them, and Mason Redman as well. I've got to give him his props. I got in his case last week or the week before, I can't remember. But I've been relatively low on him, but his best is still good. I have to acknowledge it when he plays well, and he can be inconsistent at times, but not in this game. He went at 91% disposal efficiency, 570 metres gained as well with those disposals. It was just huge for them, and he's a big piece of their team when they're up and about. So I've got to give props to Mason Redman after that game on the weekend. Dylan Shield as well. Brad Scott made the move. He is gone from the back line, which is, I'm sure, a major thank you from the Bombers fans. And what a surprise. He had his best game of the year. He had 709 metres gained from 25 touches, going at 64% disposal efficiency. So obviously he's never been like an efficient guy or a great kicker or anything, but absolutely a step in the right direction. Get him out of the back line and get him around the ball where he's going to do most of his damage. He's always been able to find it, so that's where they should be using him. And I think sort of the main point that I'm bringing up with Shield especially, and who else had a good game? Sam Durham had a really good game too, is that the mids are back and they're helping out Zach Merritt as well. So I think that Zach Merritt's been quite down with his disposal to start the year, and I expect that to turn around. So if that happens and they continue to get some production from these midfielders that aren't Zach Merritt, then they're going to be right back in the mix, I think, and could climb the board a little bit for me as well. North Melbourne, I've put them up a spot. They're no longer in the bottom three of the competition in my power rankings, and I think they've definitely reached the respectable loss era of the rebuild, which is absolutely a step forward for North. They've been super impressive to start the year, and maybe not super impressive, but I think that they've showed that they've taken a step forward. And one of the players who has actually been super impressive is Jai Simpkin, the skipper. I've never been a huge fan of his in terms of just his impact on games. Obviously, largely playing for a team that has won 0 games over the last 6 years, so it's hard to measure that sort of impact anyway. But yeah, he's had a really, really good start to the year, and I just wanted to shout him out for his efforts to on his year so far. Melbourne, again, I'm going to talk about them a bit more in the next segment, but they're 16th at the moment for me. I kind of saw this coming, so I'm not as surprised as some others may be, but there's just too much lift on too few of the guys who maybe aren't capable anymore. So yeah, that's sort of where I'm at with Melbourne. We'll dive into that in a second. West Coast, 17th. They have dropped a spot. I think, they could just be worse than Richmond. I have no clue how this talent fits together. I was sort of trying to squint and like what I've seen, but obviously Harley Reid struggling at the moment. Elijah Hewitt got subbed out as well, so and Oscar Allen has been really, really poor to start the year as well. So it's not looking great for West Coast in their rebuild right now. None of the guys are really coming on as much as you'd hope. I guess they still have no answer in the ruck. Bailey Williams, please stop playing him in the ruck. He may as well play midfielder. He is. I just don't. I don't think he's a ruckman. I think we need to see him more as he could be a key defender. He could be another target up forward. Obviously, Jake Waterman's out, but I just think that what are we doing with him in the ruck? He's not a ruckman. He's not Brodie Grundy of old or Luke Jackson or something. He showed that on the weekend. Luke Jackson had his absolute way with him, so I think that let's get him out of the ruck and at least give the West Coast mids some sort of competitive ruck in the inside there. So yeah, they're still 17th. They've got a bit more upside than the Tigers this year in terms of competitiveness, I think, with the amount of senior guys that they have, but look, they're on watch for me. I thought I liked their rebuild, but I don't know. They had a good week last week, but then they dropped Clay Hall, who I thought had a really, really good game, and out of nowhere he gets dropped. So anyway, confusing stuff. But yeah, maybe I'm overreacting to that game on the weekend. Anyway, Richmond, of course, they're last. This is the Tigers. Nothing much to talk about with them for the minute, but yeah, I think you're just hoping to see signs from them, and I won't touch the Noah Bolter stuff either because I think everyone knows where that's headed. So unfortunately for them, that's it. That's the power ranking. So just to recap, we've got Brizzy, Hawthorn, GWS, Sydney, Adelaide, Geelong, Collingwood, Freo, Gold Coast, Bulldogs, St Kilda, Port, Carlton, Essendon, North Melbourne, Melbourne, West Coast, and then Richmond rounding us out. So quick summary there for you guys, and that's where I'm at with all the teams at the moment. Hopefully we'll do. That's probably a better way to do this on the power rankings, as after a few weeks at a time, just do a bit of a recap for them. So I'll try and keep those going. Let's get into the rant time with Jordan. Not necessarily a rant this week, but if you are listening, I am partaking in Mullets for Mental Health in April. It's run by the Black Dog Institute. So if you're interested, go to www.mulletsformentalhealth.org.au, search for my name, Jordan Fasso, Fasso, and to check out what is possibly the filthiest mullet in the AFL podcast space. So donate if you can. I kept it relatively positive this week. Didn't want to nothing really pissed me off enough to give me a full-time Jordan rant this week. So yeah, please try harder AFL ecosystem to annoy me. Now, let's get into the who you got. So, who was in the bigger hole between Melbourne and Carlton? Let's look at a bit of a breakdown of both of the teams. Melbourne, both teams obviously 0-3. Melbourne have a 62 percentage. The Blues have 83 percentage. So, a little bit more competitive, the Blues, in terms of scoreboard. Their opposition, I think, are relatively even across the first 2 weeks, depending on how you feel about Gold Coast. But yeah, Melbourne have played GWS, North Melbourne, and Gold Coast, and the Blues have played Richmond, Hawthorn, and the Western Bulldogs. So, coming into the season, you would have thought that, I don't know, maybe the Blues have had a slightly tougher draw based on who you thought coming into the season, but Melbourne having the GWS, obviously a tough one, North Melbourne and the Gold Coast. So yeah, you know what, I think that the Melbourne have had an easier schedule. So that's regardless. Some of the players that are missing, so just to give a bit of context before I start to talk about the who's in the big of the hole. Cosy Pickett hasn't played a game, Judd McVie hasn't played a game, and Jake Lever and Stephen May have not played a game together yet. So they're sort of the moving parts that maybe you can point to as to why something may or may not be happening for these teams. Harry and Charlie, by the same token as Lever and May, have not played a game together yet. Alex Chincotta, we know how important he has been at times in that tagging role, defensive forward role. So, I don't think he sways it too much. Elijah Hollins, he's the one for me who I think really can provide a point of difference for the Blues. I really liked his game last year, and I think that obviously he's starting from a fair way back. I don't know if he's 100% fit or not with his leave of absence due to personal reasons, but yeah, if he is fit, I'm pretty excited at what he can provide, at least coming back. And then Mark Pittonet as well, who is injured. I don't really think that they should be playing him unless Tom de Koning is injured. Tom de Koning has been the absolute best ruckman in the competition this year, I think, and if you're going to bring Mark Pittonet in, then you're just detracting from that. So yeah, I think that although I'll acknowledge that he's out, I don't think that they'd be wise to be playing him anyway. So yeah, that's sort of the notable misses for each team. Let's get into the issues sort of as I see it for the Melbourne and Demons and the Blues. So let's start with Melbourne. And on the weekend 2 weeks ago we saw Max Gawn get pretty comfortably beaten by Tristan Xerri, and they on this against the Gold Coast on the weekend they brought in Aiden Johnson who to ruck like a fair bit to chop out Max Gawn in the end. So if Max Gawn needs a chop out due to his age or form or whatever it is, then they're going to be a lot worse than even I thought. That they used Aiden Johnson in the ruck quite a bit, and it's just not a solution. If you have to limit Max Gawn's usage in the ruck, then your biggest advantage is gone. If he can't deliver at the same level as we've been accustomed to, which was my worry coming into the season for them. There haven't been many ruckmen that have been good after the age of 34. If he's not able to deliver at the same level that he has around the ground, how important he's been in contested marking and things like that, and obviously the stoppages. And if he's not good at the stoppages anymore, then that takes value away from the guys of the likes of Christian Petrarca, Clayton Oliver, and Jack Viney, who have obviously played a lot of footy together with Max Gawn. If they're not getting the same Max Gawn that they're used to, their games look a little different too. And having to deal with that lesser supply in combination with all of their aging, let's not act like Viney's a young guy anymore. Oliver's verging on 28. He's coming from a fair way back last year. Petrarca's still recovering, so they've all got issues with some sort of question marks with their health and age at least. So I think that expecting them to magically go back and turn back the clock necessarily and now learn how to win it out of the middle without a the best ruckman in the competition by a mile is going to take some getting used to, and I don't know whether they can do that on the fly necessarily. And I think something else that needs to be said is Trent Rivers played a lot through the midfield last year with the absences of those guys, and on the weekend he was at centre bounces 3.4% of the time, and that's just not enough. And you may be thinking, Petrarca, Oliver, Viney, they're all back. Surely they're taking the time. No, Harvey Langford and Tom Sparrow spent 50-something% and 30-something% in there as well. So I just don't get it. If it's a positional thing, you're waiting until Judd McVie gets back to play him in the back line or whatever. I just think that's a poor decision by Simon Goodwin. The backs should hold up okay, especially now that Lever and May will be back playing together. So I just don't think you need Trent Rivers around the ball. He showed last year how good he can be. I was hoping for some more development over the off season and more comfortability in that role with the other mids, but they just aren't looking to play him there, and they've been horrendous defensively up until this point anyway. They're giving up the fourth most points across the competition so far, and so I don't think having Rivers playing in the back line is going to help you defensively anyway. He can always go back and help transition the ball or whatever if he's playing in the midfield. So I just don't see the value in playing him there. The other issue is that they can't even get the ball. They're dead last for clearances as a team, and they have, as I said, everyone knows who they have, but they have Max Gorn, they have Christian Petrarca, they have Jack Barney, they have Clayton Oliver. That's what this team was built on, and they can't even get, above West Coast in terms of clearances, who have no ruckman at all. So I don't know. Try something else, because the guns aren't doing it for you as they're set up to at the moment. That's why I'm saying, put Trent Rivers in the middle, for God's sake. Yeah, I think it's just I don't know. You've got 3 weeks of this now. There has to be a change, I think, coming into this week, or they've just got to play better, and I don't know whether that's possible right now. So, one saving grace for them is that they've been horrendously inaccurate to start the year. They're going at 35% in front of goal, which is last in the league, despite having the 8th most shots on goal. So that in combination with the fact that they're second last in expected average. Expected scoring average differential, so they're getting unlucky on their shots on goal, but I also don't think that's the difference between them winning or losing these games. Though they've got blown out by North Melbourne and Gold Coast, so I don't think that them being slightly unlucky in front of goal had anything to do with those games. So yeah, that's sort of the issues as I see it at Melbourne. On the Blues side, I spoke about it over the course of the start of the season, but they have no genuinely good kicks, and it seems to be no run off halfback either. Nick Newman, obviously big miss, big out for them across the whole season now. He's out with an ACL, but yeah, not having him, especially for the kicking part, and even just curling around guys on the mark, getting handoffs is not missing him is huge. I think Jordan Boyd coming on as the sub last week, he showed he can be a bit of that guy. I like his kicking quite a bit, and again, I think that maybe frees up Sard, at least defensively, to actually provide run as well. So that's conceptually at least they've actually still got to do that and execute, obviously. But yeah, I think that there's something there for the Blues, a little bit of low hanging fruit for them. But the main issue, as I said, is their lack of guys with any sort of class around the ball and skill. They just have. Let me go through this exercise with you. So these are their top ball winners in order for the year in terms of disposals, right? So you got Cripps, Chera, George Hewitt, Tom de Koning, Sam Walsh, Adam Sard, Blake Acres. So that's the top 7 possession winners at Carlton this year. And do you want to guess who out of that list is either above average? Who out of that list is above average in either disposal efficiency or kicking efficiency? So either of the stats. The answer is no one. Not one of their top 7 guys is above average, disposing of the ball overall or kicking the ball, which is just astounding to me. I don't know. I have to go through the other teams to see if the top 7, how many are above or below. But for me, that is just incredible that none of those guys are above or below, above average. So that's really concerning. The only player that is above average is Jacob Wiedering, who is next on that list with he's. What is he? He must be 8th in disposals for them. So, he's only above average in disposal efficiency. So not even kicking efficiency. So what that tells me is that there's a combination of things happening there. They're not good enough individually in terms of their skills, and they aren't working hard enough to create opportunities or create space to make easier kicks for each other. So, that obviously plays into the fact that they've been run over in every game that they've played this year. So I think that, it could be a combination of the fatigue, but also just no skill. So, yeah, it's a little bit concerning right now for the Blues. I think that, who as for which team is more likely to overcome these issues, I don't know. On the Melbourne side, it's hard to sort of see how it improves from here. How much does the return of Cozzy Pickett help this team, or how much does the return of Lever and May playing together finally help this team? I don't think that those are the issues necessarily. They can't even win the ball at the moment. So the defense, I expect to be solid with those guys back, but if they aren't able to win the ball, then they're probably just not going to score anyway. So I think that they need a bit of more of an overhaul of their structure in the midfield and the forward line in particular. If Gawn isn't that guy anymore, like I've said, then then they need better mids who can win at a disadvantage. Then mids need to be better in order to be able to win at a disadvantage in the ruck. And I'm not saying Gawn's going to be a disadvantage on each week, but if you're not going to play him in there as much and he's not as good, then it is a disadvantage to what they've become accustomed to. And I would look at playing, Cozzy Pickett inside as much as possible and as much as his tank sort of allows. I understand he's coming back from injury, so maybe he's going to be limited there. But, that at least gives them some speed around the ball that they currently lack. And I sort of don't think that you're going to be able to fix the forward line this year regardless. So, playing him in the middle will at least give you some more opportunities in theory to win the ball. And, it may sound simple, but Petrarca, Oliver and Gawn just have to play better. This team is absolutely built around those three, in particular being, the best clearance team in the league or one of the best. So if they aren't able to do that, then I just don't think their defense, as good as it has been in recent years, has much of a chance to sort of outweigh what those guys and how bad they're playing is sort of taking off the table for the Ds at the moment. So, yeah, I think that I don't know I don't think it's super likely they can overcome all that, especially just given the level of competition and the fact that they've started 0-3 as well. And on the Carlton side, are they likely to overcome this start? I think that, Carlton have more of a chance to at least normalise, for their level of disposal to regress to the mean. I don't think it's going to be this bad for the whole season, and a lot of the other indicators are still solid for them. They're first in total clearances still, so they're absolutely getting their hands on the ball. Between Tom DeConey and Paddy Cripps, they're absolutely dominating out of the clearances. But it's obviously, as I said, the disposal is just really, really letting them down, and it's at an absolute worst in the competition sort of level for me. So I think once they get the main hope for them is that obviously that normalises a little bit, and then once they get Harry and Charlie together, I think that there's still as much as I think that'll help, I think there's still a pretty heavy ceiling on this group, or firm ceiling. I think having those two back together will be able to allow them to score more effectively, and it'll sort of spread opposition defenses more and won't be quite as predictable, or you can't really focus on it just being Harry or just being Charlie. You have to worry about them both again. So maybe that sort of lends itself to their poor disposals. Will helps the poor disposals in that, the defense isn't going to be as keyed in on where it's going. So maybe those things are sort of related in that way. Only time will tell, but I think that if you squint, there's a bit more hope for Carlton in this regard. I think they're doing some things really, really well at the moment, and it's honestly just their disposal and just consistency through the game that's really letting them down. Whereas Melbourne, it's just a talent issue, and that talent is just not performing. Whereas I think that the guys can kick a bit better for Carlton, so it's definitely a smaller issue. So for that reason, I think we trust the Blues to bounce back a lot more than I do the Ds at this point in the season, and that's probably reflective in the power rankings too. So definitely more believing in the Blues bouncing back, and I think that the hole that the Demons are in is quite a hole, to say the least. So that's where I'm at with those guys. And who you got? I've got the Blues bouncing back in that regard. Well, in comparison to the Ds anyway. So. Yeah, let's end end today with the Secret Star Society inductee for round 3, and it is Cam Mackenzie of the Hawthorn Footy Club. I don't really know if he's necessarily a secret anymore, but this guy's taken full advantage of James Worpel being injured. He was taken pick 7 in it's his 3rd season now, so whatever draft that was, and it seems like we are witnessing the emergence of Cam Mackenzie and his breakout season. And he has, for anyone who doesn't watch a lot of the Hawks games, he has an uncanny similarity to Sam Mitchell in the way that he moves and plays out there. Definitely not the same sort of kick off his left boot by any means, but he has that sort of shake and agility, that quick acceleration in traffic that Sam Mitchell had, and he's got really good skills by hand and by foot, at least his right foot anyway. He's been above average in both kicking efficiency and disposal efficiency so far this year for a midfielder, and I think that culminated in this game on the weekend against GWS, who have obviously a really good midfield themselves, but it was his most impressive game that I've seen him play, where he was probably Hawthorn's best midfielder in the end. He had 30 touches, and it was only in 65% game time, which is really impressive. I thought, if he's able to bump that up to 70, 75, then yeah, who knows how many touches he'd be able to get, and that's his sort of first 30. I reckon that is his first 30 touch game. Jesus, cannot speak. Yeah, his first 30 touch game. So that was impressive by Cam, I thought. And now that we have a few games sample, we are going to be back running the stat similarity tool that we had running last year, and his closest comparison for the season so far is Gold Coast Suns midfielder Sam Flanders. So I like that comparison as well, for what it's worth. But yeah, Sam Mitchell 2.0 will do very nicely as well for the Hawks. So yeah, just a nice little tidbit to end on there, guys. And yeah, keep an eye out for Cam McKenzie for anyone watching Hawks games. Alrighty, guys, we'll be back next week.